My name is H.A. Goodman. I'm an author, columnist, and journalist. Hit subscribe right now. You definitely want to get the take of a former Bernie Sanders supporter. The Huffington Post called me the biggest Bernie Sanders supporter on the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, who became a Trump supporter. You want to get my take because I know how Democrats cheat. I know what kind of value system they have. There is no value system. They just hate. They hate anything that gets in their way in terms of obtaining power. And whether it's Julian Assange, the indictments or the charges that have been leveled upon him started in 2010. Grand jury was impaneled in 2010. Now, that being said, if, God forbid, he's ever extradited to the United States of America, I'm not voting for President Trump. I'm hoping and praying that President Trump will not engage in that activity. I'm hoping and praying that that doesn't happen. But as of now, because it started under Obama and because the fuel against Assange is just the pure contempt from it's coming from the left. This started all before President Trump. So I'm still a Trump supporter. I'm still voting for President Trump. But that's regarding the Assange issue, which, by the way, Bernie Sanders should defend Julian Assange. He hasn't. Getting back to elections, Debbie Wasserman Schultz cheated Bernie Sanders. I remember when I was on the left, everyone was saying, well, wait a second, this is not right. Bernie Sanders, it seems like he's being cheated. He's almost certainly being cheated. Yeah, he's being cheated. Well, do you have any proof? Well, how do you know? WikiLeaks DNC emails come out. Debbie Wasserman Schultz and others are forced to resign. And, oh, by the way, not only is there proof, but Russia did it, and it was an elaborate plot by Vladimir Putin to work with President Trump to inform swing state voters that Bernie was cheated while at the same time giving Hillary the popular vote. That's the mind of the liberal American Democrat. They're completely out of it. They'll believe anything that John Brennan and MSNBC tell them. Three times a charm. So Bill Nelson is trying to cheat and steal the election for the third time. Bill Nelson's chances grow dim as hand recount begins in Orange, Broward. Florida's manual recount of about 93,000 undervotes and overvotes in the U.S. Senate and Agriculture Commissioner races were in full swing across the state Friday as U.S. Senator Bill Nelson suffered a key defeat in court, making his chances of overcoming his 13,000 vote deficit to Governor Rick Scott even slimmer. In Orange County, dozens of staffers and volunteers packed the warehouse between the Supervisor of Elections office in Orlando for the U.S. Senate recount. At each of the more than 20 tables, two staffers sat, with one Republican and Democratic volunteer, including the current and former Orange GOP chairs, and went through more than 3,000 ballots 10 at a time, sorting them into valid votes, undervotes, overvotes, and disputed ballots. The hand recounts are only for ballots rejected by the machines. So that's not going to be enough to make up the deficit, but reforms made after the chaotic presidential election of 2000 created a wide leeway for allowing votes as long as someone hadn't chosen more than one candidate in a race. If someone filled in the bubble for a candidate and also wrote the same name in a write-in line, the vote gets counted, for example. So the whole thing is a complete mess. Broward County election officials, one election official, Dr. Snipes, was deemed to have illegally destroyed ballots by a judge in 2016. The ruling was in 2017, I believe. This was regarding Tim Canova and Debbie Wasserman Schultz. You then have the issue of voting machines malfunctioning during the latest recount, the second one, not the third one, that's taking place with a hand recount. You had voting machines that were overheating. So you had voting machines that malfunctioned, then they overheated. You had an issue where Broward County and surrounding counties were calling up voters saying they can alter their ballots after the election. You have voters voting by email. It was absurd There was a litany of absurd, unbelievable things taking place. And what media does is they say, well, those things are mutually exclusive. You can have inept and complete incompetence and inept officials, and that could be all coincidence. It doesn't mean there's a nefarious plot. Yeah, the more inept you are, the more time you have to count votes or find votes, like ballot boxes that double as office storage equipment were found all throughout Broward County. So you have, that's an article in the Miami Herald. So you have all of this suspicious activity, and it's the reason there's all this suspicious activity is because it allows a county like Broward County to cheat by simply hiding behind plausible deniability. Oh, well, you know what? I guess we have to have a recount. That's weird. Well, then you recount, and suddenly it goes from 57,000 to 15,000 to 13,000 votes, where Rick Scott is up. This is the last attempt Bill Nelson has tried, so there's a hand recount that's underway for ballots that have been rejected. He's not going to find enough. There haven't been 13,000 ballots rejected, one can assume. So Bill Nelson suffers court setback as hand recount continues in Florida. He's just not giving up. The guy is going to be asking for a recount 10 years from now. Senator Bill Nelson's already improbable path towards victory in a recount got narrower, with the Democrats suffering a series of setbacks in courts and county election offices across the state. So Nelson was handed a consequential loss early on Friday morning when Judge Mark Walker ruled that the guidelines Florida law provides to election canvassing boards as to how to determine voter intent in a manual recount are constitutional. So there you go. Nelson was handed a consequential loss early Friday when the judge ruled that the guidelines Florida law provides to election canvassing boards as to how to determine voter intent in a manual recount are constitutional. So he's trying to literally create laws after he's literally trying to create. Democrats literally try to create laws after the fact, after the election. And isn't it interesting how many House races and Senate races have been down to the wire? And gee, the Democrat always wins. The Democrat wins almost always, if not always. That's bizarre. I'm sure there's nothing to it. Anyway, give me your thoughts. Hit subscribe right now. Thank you so very much. God bless and have a great, great day.